The eviction officer had changed the lock when a stranger stepped onto Mara Ellis's porch and spoke her dead husband's name. Why did he know the exact words Ben used whenever he made a promise? Why had he carried a rusted brass key for 18 months? And why did a county official go pale when she saw it? Mara had 10 minutes to leave the only home her daughter remembered. Neighbors watched as the girl hugged a box marked Dad. Then the stranger said what no drifter should have known. Ben had expected this day. What followed exposed a lie buried beneath an accident, a mortgage, and one promise that had never been broken. Stay to the end, because the truth behind that key changes everything. 10 minutes, Elaine Cross said, pinning the blue notice against Mara Ellis's front door while the locksmith fitted a silver cylinder into the old brass plate. The new lock clicked. Dry leaves slid along the suddenly quiet curb. Mara stood on the porch in a thin sweater, one hand on the rail, the other around Sophie's shoulder. The boards chilled her bare feet. "You said we could take the kitchen boxes," Mara said. "You may remove personal essentials." Elaine checked her watch. "Anything listed with the property remains." Paul Drake, the court officer, shifted beside the doorway. "The child's things aren't fixtures." Elaine did not look at him. 9 minutes. Sophie hugged a sagging box to her chest. Dad was written across it in Ben's block letters, faded at the edges. "Mom?" she whispered. "Is his blue mug personal?" Mara tried to answer. Across the street, Iris Bell watched from behind her storm door. A driver slowed, then kept going. The stranger came up the sidewalk carrying a battered canvas tool bag. He was tall but stooped, rain darkening his worn coat. A brass key hung from a cord at his throat. Paul stepped down. "Sir, this is a restricted removal." The man stopped at the bottom stair. His eyes went to Sophie's box, then to Mara. Ben Ellis promised this wouldn't happen without a witness. Mara's fingers tightened on Sophie's sleeve. "Who are you?" Elaine's pen slipped against her clipboard. Mara saw it. "Jonah Vale," he said. "I worked with your husband." Ben repaired municipal bridges. He did more than repair them. Elaine snapped her pen shut. "Mr. Vale, leave the property." Jonah lifted the key, but did not climb the steps. A tiny lighthouse was scratched into its round head. Sophie leaned forward. "Dad drew those." Mara pulled her back. "You could have seen that anywhere." "No, he used it when a promise needed a second keeper." Elaine's face changed. Paul noticed. "Do you recognize that key?" "It is irrelevant." Her answer came too fast. 8 minutes. Jonah placed his bag on the wet pavement and opened one buckle. Inside lay wrapped tools, an envelope, and a folded blue document. Mara moved down one stair. Elaine stepped between them. "Do not hand her anything." "Why?" Paul asked. "The order is active." Jonah kept his eyes on Mara. "Did your notice arrive in a blue envelope?" She smelled wet wool and machine oil from the locksmith's drill. "Yes." "Was the case number prefixed 74? Her breath caught. She had stared at those digits at 2 a.m. until they blurred. Elaine raised her phone. "Officer, remove him." Paul stayed where he was. "On what grounds?" "Interference." Jonah took out the sealed envelope. "Ben told me that if both things happened, I was to find Mara before Mercer's people emptied the house." At the name Mercer, Iris opened her door. Sophie's box tore. A wooden plane, 3 photographs, Ben's blue mug, and a bundle of letters struck the porch. The mug rolled to the new threshold and stopped without breaking. No one bent to pick it up. Then Jonah said, "The promise was never about the mortgage." Elaine stared at the envelope in his hand, and for the first time that morning, she forgot to count down. 2 days earlier, at 6:45 a.m., the kitchen faucet counted out the morning in cold metallic drops. Mara twisted the handle. The pipe shuddered, then resumed tapping into the steel basin. "Still leaking?" Sophie asked. "Still negotiating. With who? The plumbing?" Sophie crossed the linoleum, her backpack open. A worksheet trailed from the zipper. Mara saw the red stamp. Field trip payment due. "How much?" Sophie folded the page. "It's okay. Ms. Calloway said I can help in the library." Mara held out her hand. $12. The toaster clicked. One slice rose burned at the edge. Mara scraped it over the sink and turned the dark crust down. "You're going," she said. "We need light bulbs more." "We can need 2 things." Sophie glanced toward the pantry wall. Pencil marks climbed the paint. Sophie, age 6, age 7, age 8. Dad always said that. Mara slipped the notice beneath 3 overdue envelopes in the ceramic sugar bowl. The lid struck too sharply. At 7:18, she walked Sophie to the bus through air smelling of cedar. Ben's brown work jacket still hung beside the back door, one cuff streaked with bridge paint. Everything else had been washed. "Don't let the house drip away," Sophie called. "I'll defend every drop." Mara waved until the bus vanished beyond the maples. Back inside, she spread bills across the table. Electric, heating oil, property tax, no mortgage statement. She called the servicing office and read Ben's account number. Keys clicked. "That account was transferred," the woman said. "To whom?" "I can't disclose that." "You sent no notice." "There would have been one." "The insurance was supposed to pay the mortgage." "I don't see a payoff." Mara stilled. The policy listed the lender first. "I only see a delinquent balance." The amount was almost 8 months of her clinic wages. The faucet struck the sink. Then again. "Check Ben Ellis. Date of death, April 14th, 2025. I have the death record." "Then you have the claim." "I have no claim." The woman lowered her voice. "Call county housing today." At 10:03, Mara climbed onto a chair to reach the shelf Ben had never finished. One bracket held. The second lay beside his pencil. She searched his folders and found a photograph of Sophie asleep on his chest. Behind it was an envelope stamped, "Paid in full." Inside lay a photocopied insurance form. Ben's signature sat at the bottom. Above it, the beneficiary had been changed to North Key Holdings, an unknown company. Her phone rang. "Mrs. Ellis?" a man said. "Louise Park, County Housing. I'm calling about the final possession notice." "What final notice?" A chair scraped at his end. "It was delivered yesterday." Mara looked at the roadside mailbox. The flag was down. "Who authorized it?" "I'm not permitted to discuss the file." "You called me." "I was told to confirm receipt." "By whom?" Louise hesitated. Director Cross. Mara crossed the yard without a coat. Gravel bit through her slippers. The wind smelled of rain. One blue envelope lay inside the mailbox, damp at the corners. She tore it open in the road. Velkout within 48 hours. Her breath clouded the page. At the bottom, beneath Elaine Cross's printed name, the case number began with 74. At 3:42 p.m., Sophie stepped off the school bus and stopped beneath the dripping shelter. A man stood beside the route map, holding yesterday's Bellwether Gazette open to Ben's photograph. His coat sagged at the shoulders. Rain darkened the cuffs, and a brass key rested against his shirt on a black cord. Sophie did not move. Mara crossed the road before the bus doors shut. "Come here." The man lowered the paper. "Mrs. Ellis?" Mara put herself between him and Sophie. Wet leaves clung to her slippers. "How do you know my name?" "Ben showed me a picture once." "You knew my husband?" I knew what he was trying to finish. Sophie's hand disappeared into Mara's sleeve. Water ticked from the shelter roof onto the bench. Mara looked at the article from the week of Ben's death. Municipal engineer lost in bridge accident. Someone had circled the final paragraph. Were you at the funeral? No. Then stop looking at his picture and walk away. The man folded the paper. Nobody should have to pay for the truth alone. Mara's breath caught. Ben had said those words in their kitchen 3 nights before he died, while drying Sophie's blue mug. When Mara asked what he meant, he kissed her forehead and changed the subject. Where did you hear that? From him? Sophie peered around Mara. What's your name? Jonah Vale. He spoke gently, but Mara heard the pause before his surname. You've been watching our house. I've been waiting to see whether the notice came. What notice? The blue one. A truck passed, spraying water across the curb. Jonah stepped back so it struck his trousers instead of Sophie's shoes. Mara noticed. She hated that she noticed. Stay away from my daughter. I intend to. Then leave. Jonah reached slowly into his coat and produced cracked reading glasses. He put them on and looked toward the envelope protruding from Mara's tote. That is it, isn't it? She pushed it deeper. You know nothing about it. I know North Key Holdings didn't exist when Ben signed his insurance papers. Mara went still. Across the street, the pharmacy sign buzzed in the gray afternoon. How do you know that name? Because Ben asked me to find out who did. Her fingers would not release the tote strap. Sophie whispered, Mom, he has Dad's lighthouse. The brass key had turned sideways. Scratched into its head was the narrow tower Ben drew beside grocery lists, birthday notes, and on the cast Sophie wore after breaking her wrist. Jonah covered it with his palm. Where did you get that? From Ben. No. He gave it to me 18 months ago. Ben died 18 months ago. I know. The answer landed between them with the hiss of tires on wet pavement. Mara stepped closer. If you were his friend, why didn't you come before? Because he made me promise not to. And now? Jonah looked at the blue corner showing from her bag. Now he would say the promise has changed. A gust lifted the newspaper from his hand. Sophie caught it against the bench. On the back, beneath Ben's photograph, someone had written a number beginning with 74. Mara saw Jonah watching her recognize it. Show me the notice, he said. Then I'll tell you why your husband was afraid of that number. The paper cut came before Mara felt it. She spread the blue notice, Ben's insurance copy, and the Gazette across the kitchen table. When she dragged the order closer, its edge sliced her finger. A bright bead fell onto the county seal. Jonah hung his wet coat over a chair. Case number. Mara pressed a towel to the cut. Who are you, really? A man Ben trusted with one instruction. That isn't an answer. It's the only one I can give before I see the file. The faucet struck the sink. Drip. Drip. Sophie sat on the counter, watching both adults. Mara slid the notice halfway across. You don't touch it. Jonah bent over the page. He placed Ben's old statement beside it. These numbers don't match. One is county, one is the loan. No. He tapped the last 6 digits. This identifies the account. Ben's ends in 1184. This order ends in 1814. Mara leaned closer. A typing error? Not on 3 pages. He turned the notice over. A pale code hid in the lower corner. Sophie said, That's the number on the newspaper. Jonah glanced at her. Good catch. Mara pulled the papers back. Don't bring her into this. You came to her bus stop. I came because the county office closes at 5. At 4:11, Mara called Elaine Cross's office. Louise Park answered. County Housing. This is Mara Ellis. I need the original account attached to case 74-. Keys stopped clicking. Mrs. Ellis, I can't discuss that file. You called me yesterday. I confirmed delivery. You said Director Cross authorized it. A chair creaked. I shouldn't have said that. Jonah wrote on an envelope and pushed it toward Mara. Ask who entered the account. Mara read the question. Luis went quiet. I don't have access to the entry log, he said. Who does? Director Cross. Transfer me. She's unavailable. It's 4:12. She's unavailable to you. The line disconnected. Mara stared at the phone. You expected that? I expected the wrong person to be frightened. Luis sounded frightened. He sounded watched. Mara shoved back her chair. Stop turning every bad answer into proof that you're right. Jonah's mouth tightened. Ben said you would. She crossed the kitchen. Do not use my husband to win an argument in his house. Sophie slid down from the counter. Her socks whispered over the floor. Jonah removed the brass key and placed it beside the blood-marked seal. Then don't believe me. Believe the mismatch. Only the faucet spoke. Mara opened the county website and searched the case number. No public record found. She tried the mortgage number from Ben's statement. Account closed. Benefit satisfied. Her hand went cold around the mouse. That means paid, Sophie said. Yes. Jonah held the notice to the window. A watermark appeared. North Key Asset Recovery. Mara's phone rang. County Housing. Elaine Cross spoke before Mara could greet her. I understand a stranger is reviewing documents that belong to this office. Mara looked at Jonah. He had not touched the phone. How do you know he's here? Bring every page to my office by 5. Do not make copies. The call ended. Outside, a dark sedan rolled past the kitchen window and stopped at the corner. At 6:18 p.m., the school gym smelled of floor wax, coffee, and wet wool. A banner above the stage read, Building Stronger Families. Grant Mercer stood beneath it in a charcoal suit, while parents applauded his promise to fund repairs for widowed households. Mara waited near the bleachers, with the blue notice folded inside Ben's insurance form. Sophie sat with her class. Mrs. Ellis? Ruth Calloway approached, 40, silver hair escaping a loose braid. Sophie said you might miss the field trip. I won't. Ruth glanced at the papers. Is something wrong? Before Mara answered, Grant stepped down from the stage. He was broad-shouldered, smoothing his cuff before speaking. Mara Ellis, Ben's wife. Widow, Mara said. The smile held. I was sorry about the accident. You employed North Key Holdings. His fingers stopped at his cuff. Grant lowered his voice. This is a school event. My house is being taken by a company linked to yours. Owen Price, Grant's 33-year-old assistant, moved closer. His tie was crooked. He kept checking the room. North Key purchases distressed accounts, Grant said. I don't manage individual files. Ben's insurance paid the lender. The county site says the account closed. Grief complicates paperwork. Mara said nothing. He leaned nearer. Some people struggle with practical matters after a loss. There's no shame in admitting you need help. The microphone on stage was still live. His last sentence crossed the gym. A paper cup stopped halfway to a father's mouth. Ruth's jaw tightened. Sophie looked up from the third row. Grant reached for the switch. I do need help, Mara said. I need someone to explain why my husband's paid account was reopened under a different number. The applause died one person at a time. Grant's gaze settled on the blue edge between her fingers. Where did you get that? It was mailed to me. I mean the insurance form. Owen raised his phone at chest height. The screen flashed once. Ruth stepped between him and Mara. "Did you photograph her documents?" "No, ma'am." "Then show me." He locked the screen. "Company business." "This is a school, not your company." Grant's smile vanished for less than a second. "Ms. Calloway, we are guests supporting your students. And she is one of their mothers." Sophie crossed the gym and pressed against Mara's side. Everyone heard him. Mara folded the papers along the old crease, hiding the tremor in her thumb. "Good." Grant looked down at Sophie. "Your father was a fine worker." Sophie stared at his polished shoes. He was an engineer. The silence that followed was small and exact. Grant faced Mara again. "Bring those documents to my office tomorrow. I'll have legal review them." "No copies?" His eyes sharpened. "Originals are easier to authenticate," he said. Ruth touched Mara's elbow. "Don't." Owen's phone buzzed. He read the message, then looked at Mara's papers. Grant smoothed his cuff. 8:30. We can solve this quietly." Mara lifted Sophie's coat from the bleacher. "Quiet is how it got this far." At the exit, Ruth slipped a folded program into Mara's palm. On the back, she had written, "I saw Owen send the photo to Elaine Cross." At 8:06 a.m., the first photograph hit the porch face down. Sophie froze, clutching the torn box. The seam beneath the black letters Dad had split, spilling Ben's blue mug, a wooden hand plane, 3 bundles of letters, and a stack of family pictures across the rain-darkened steps. "Don't move," Mara said. She held Sophie with one arm and a duffel with the other. Elaine Cross stood in the doorway beside Paul Drake, her cream raincoat dry. "Personal essentials only," Elaine said. "The tool chest and its contents remain with the property." "That box belongs to my husband," Mara replied. "It belonged to the borrower. My husband had a name." Paul looked down, but did not bend. Across the street, a curtain shifted. Iris Bell had opened her storm door, a hand over her mouth. Sophie crouched. Mara caught her shoulder. "Stay. The steps are slick." A photograph of Ben at the county fair slid through rainwater and stuck to the lowest board, his face hidden against the wood. Elaine checked her watch. 7 minutes. The drill whined inside. Hot metal sharpened the cold air. Jonah came through the gate with his canvas bag. Paul stepped toward him. "You were told to remain off the property." "I'm on the sidewalk." "You're interfering." "I'm picking up a photograph." He climbed one step, knelt, and lifted Ben's picture by the corners. Rain softened the paper. Jonah pressed it between his palms, then laid it face up on the dry lining of his open bag. Elaine's voice tightened. "Mr. Vale, leave now." Jonah reached for another. Ben hated having his picture taken. Mara stared at him. "How would you know?" "He always stood at the edge so he could be cropped out." Sophie looked at the fair photograph. Ben was half behind Mara, exactly as Jonah said. Elaine moved down one step. "Officer Drake, call local police." Paul left his radio at his belt. "For collecting family photographs?" "For obstructing a lawful possession." Jonah picked up the blue mug. A hairline crack ran from the handle, but it held. Sophie whispered, "Dad used that every morning." Jonah turned the handle toward her before setting it inside the bag. 3 sugars. Mara loosened her grip on the duffel. 2, she said. 2 in coffee. 3 when he was scared. Elaine went still. The quiet made the rain louder. Jonah pulled a sealed envelope from beneath the fallen letters. On its front, in Ben's handwriting, was a small lighthouse and one sentence. "If the house is taken, the promise has failed." Elaine reached for it. That document is part of the seized contents. Jonah held it behind his back. No, it was addressed to Mara. There is no address. There is a witness. He looked across the road. Iris Bell stepped into the rain without an umbrella. I saw who put that box in Ben's truck the week before he died. Elaine's mouth thinned. Mrs. Bell, return to your home. Iris reached the gate. It wasn't Ben. Paul finally raised his radio. Sophie touched the wet photograph on Jonah's bag. Who was it? Iris kept her eyes on Elaine. Grant Mercer's assistant, she said. A patrol car turned onto the street before anyone called. The patrol car stopped with one tire against the curb. Officer Nathan Brooks stepped out, 35 and square-faced. Sergeant Kira Madden followed, 46, bareheaded, with a paper cup softened by rain. Who called? Brooks asked. Elaine pointed at Jonah. He removed material from secured property and refused a lawful order. I picked up photographs, Jonah said, and concealed a document. Mara stepped between them. It has my husband's handwriting. Brooks held out his hand. Give me the envelope. Jonah looked at Mara before surrendering it. Do not let it leave with housing. Elaine gave a short laugh. He doesn't set evidence procedure. Madden took the envelope instead. Her thumb paused over the lighthouse. Paul said, No one called dispatch from here. Brooks glanced at the cruiser. County Control sent us. Before I touched anything? Jonah asked. Rain clicked on the patrol car roof. Elaine checked her watch. The possession must continue. Brooks turned to Jonah. Step away. Once the family's property is separated, you don't have standing. I have a duty. That is not the same thing. Jonah showed his empty hands. No, officer. It usually costs more. Brooks took his elbow and guided him toward the cruiser. Jonah did not resist. Only his shoes scraped the sidewalk. Sophie moved after him. Mara caught her coat. Mom, he saved Dad's picture. I know. Brooks opened the rear door. You're detained for interference pending verification. Jonah bent before sitting. The key stays with Mara. Elaine stepped forward. Anything connected to the property remains inventoried. Madden removed the brass key from Jonah's cord. I'll log it. Log the number stamped on the shaft. Elaine's gaze dropped to the key. Mara saw it. The station smelled of damp uniforms and burnt coffee. Jonah sat on a metal bench beneath a buzzing fluorescent tube. Cold climbed through his trousers. Beyond the glass, Sophie pressed her hands to her ears while Elaine spoke over Mara. The child cannot remain in processing. She stays with me. Madden laid the envelope, key, and papers on the counter. Mrs. Ellis, this may be relevant to a property dispute. It belongs to me. It has no address. It has my life written on the front. Elaine pushed over a form. Transfer everything to county storage. Jonah stood. Not that envelope. Brooks pressed a palm to his chest. Sit. Jonah did. Louise Park entered with an archive box. His glasses were fogged, and one shirt button sat in the wrong hole. Elaine frowned. Why are you here? You told me to collect case materials. Then collect them. Louise lifted the envelope. Beneath Ben's handwriting was a typed reference, FED-TRS-74-1814. His fingers stopped. What is it? Madden asked. Nothing, Elaine said. Louise looked at Mara, then Jonah. He slipped a carbon sheet under the intake form and copied the number. When Elaine turned toward Brooks, he tore off the yellow page and folded it into his sleeve. Mara noticed, but said nothing. The archive box closed with the envelope inside. As Elaine carried it toward the rear exit, Jonah called through the glass. That case was never supposed to be closed. Elaine did not turn, but Luis did. At 11:37 p.m., the laundromat's sign buzzed blue against the rain. Mara pushed the glass door open with her shoulder. Warm air smelled of detergent and hot dust. Sophie dragged the duffel, its zipper ticking across the tile. The shelter had locked its doors at 11. "I'm not tired," Sophie said. "You're walking sideways." "I'm conserving energy." Mara chose 3 plastic chairs. She spread Ben's work jacket across them and folded a sleeve under Sophie's head. "Wake me when we go home." "I will." Sophie's eyes stayed open. Did Dad take his promise with him? A dryer thumped behind them. Mara turned a chair so she would not have to face her daughter. "Promises don't work like keys." "Then how do they work?" "They stay with the people who heard them." "But you didn't know this one." The dryer thumped again. Mara tucked the jacket under Sophie's chin. "Close your eyes." By midnight, Sophie slept. Mara fed their damp clothes and her emergency quarters into washer 6. $2 remained. Cold water flashed behind the glass. She sat under the fluorescent lights with Ben's sealed letter in her lap. Rain had blurred the lighthouse on the front. Jonah's warning returned. Do not let it leave with housing. She had not stopped Elaine. She had not stopped anyone. At 12:14, a door opened. Mara's chair scraped. The thin night attendant emerged with a mop bucket. "You can't sleep here," he said. "My daughter is 9. "That doesn't change the policy." He looked at Sophie, then at the rain streaking the windows. "1 load." "Thank you." "I didn't say that." He moved to the far aisle and mopped very slowly. Inside the washer, one of Sophie's socks spun alone, appearing and vanishing. Mara watched until her breath matched the machine. Her phone showed 3 missed calls and 1 voicemail. Louise Park whispered through static. "Mrs. Ellis, I copied the federal reference. There are other files with the same prefix. Families of deceased city workers. Please don't call back." The message ended with a door closing near him. Mara replayed it, then saved it. At 12:31, she found Ben's letter between the damp photographs. Madden must have returned it after Elaine left. Mara had carried it without remembering. Her thumb slid beneath the flap. She stopped. Ben had sealed it. Jonah had asked for witnesses. Everyone involved seemed to want her alone. Mara walked to the trash bin. The envelope hovered over the opening. A drop of water fell from her sleeve onto the lighthouse. The ink spread, revealing a line pressed so lightly she had missed it. "Not without Ruth." Mara lowered her hand. From the chairs, Sophie spoke without opening her eyes. "Did you throw Dad away?" "No." "You almost did." "Yes." Sophie curled deeper into the jacket. "He'd forgive you." Mara looked at the envelope. "That's not what scares me." At 12:43, she called Ruth Calloway. The teacher answered on the 4th ring. "Mara? I need a witness." A pause. Sheets rustled. "Where are you?" "The laundromat on Cedar." "I'm coming." Mara ended the call and saw headlights slow outside. A dark sedan stopped beyond the fogged glass. The attendant stopped mopping. The sedan's lights went out, but no one opened the door. At 12:52 a.m., Ruth Calloway entered the laundromat carrying an umbrella, a legal pad, and 1 red mitten. "I grabbed the wrong thing," she said, eyeing the mitten. "Long night." Mara pointed toward the dark sedan outside. "It's been there 9 minutes." Ruth sat where the glass reflected the lot. "Then we don't give them a show." Sophie slept under Ben's jacket. Mara placed the sealed letter on the table. Ben wrote, "Not without Ruth." Ruth's face changed. "He knew my name?" "He knew you taught Sophie." "No, before the accident." The sedan rolled away without headlights. At 1:07, Ruth called Louise Park from a blocked number. "I can't talk," he whispered. "Meet us at school. Side entrance." "I'll lose my job." Mara leaned toward the phone. "You may have saved our house." 20 minutes. The school office stung Mara's wet hands with cold. Ruth unlocked the records room and lit one desk lamp. Luis arrived at 1:34 with the yellow copy folded inside his sock. "I found 6 files," he said. "Same federal prefix. Different accounts. All families of city employees who died. Foreclosures? 3 completed. 2 pending. Yours is tomorrow." He fed a page into the copier. The machine woke with a cough. One sheet emerged. Then another. Ruth aligned them by date. "These signatures are identical." "They're Elaine's," Luis said. "No, they're copies of one signature." Mara traced the same final hook on every page. The printer kept spitting out the same lie. Luis opened the county log. "The entries came from Director Cross's terminal after midnight, but someone used an outside access token." "Whose?" He swallowed. "Owen Price." Ruth looked toward the window. "Grant Mercer's assistant." A chime sounded. Someone had tried to access the school network. Ruth pulled the cable. "Too late," Luis said. "They know I opened the files." At 2:03, Iris Bell arrived in a flowered robe beneath her raincoat, carrying a memory card in a sandwich bag. "My porch camera," she said. "The week Ben died." The video showed Ben's truck beneath her street lamp. At 11:16 p.m., Owen removed a thick folder. Elaine's sedan waited across the road. Mara gripped the table edge. "Can we copy it?" Iris asked. "We copy everything," Ruth said. Luis started 3 drives. The progress bars crawled. A knock struck the side entrance. Then Officer Brooks called through the metal door. "Mara, Sergeant Madden released Jonah Vale. He says the letter must not be opened alone." Mara looked at the envelope. "Who's with you?" "Jonah. No one from housing." The locks turned one by one. Jonah entered, rain on his shoulders, and a dark mark beneath one eye. He looked at the letter. "Not yet," he said. Mara stood. "You told me to find witnesses. They're here." "I said independent witnesses." Ruth folded her arms. "A teacher? A clerk? A neighbor? A police officer? How independent do you need?" Jonah set the brass key on the table. "Independent of the promise." No one spoke. He pointed to the federal reference beneath Ben's handwriting. "That number means the letter becomes evidence the moment it is opened." From the copier tray, another page slid out. At the bottom was a name none of them expected to see. Benjamin Ellis. At 2:19 a.m., the copier released the page with Ben's name at the bottom. Mara pulled it free. A tiny lighthouse sat beside Ben's unmistakable signature. "He signed this," Ruth said. "No," Jonah replied. "He marked it." "What's the difference?" Luis asked. "A signature accepts it. The lighthouse means it was altered." Mara read, "Transfer of protected mortgage assets." Sophie sat by the heater in Ben's jacket. "Protected from what?" No one answered. Mara faced Jonah. "Open the letter. We need Brooks on record." Brooks started his camera. 2:21. Ruth locked the door. Jonah touched the flap. "Wait," Mara said. She tried to fasten Sophie's top button. Her fingers missed twice. "You don't have to hear this." "I heard everyone call Dad careless," Sophie said, fastening it herself. "I want to hear him be careful." Jonah opened the envelope. Inside were 4 pages and a bridge photograph from 6 days before Ben's death. A red circle marked a fracture. On the back, not structural failure. Report replaced after inspection. Luis leaned closer. Mercer's company repaired that section. "On paper," Jonah said. Mara unfolded the first page. "Mara, if you are reading this," the blue notice came. Her voice failed. Ruth reached for the letter. "No." Mara held it flat. "He wrote it to me." Ben described reports changed after approval, unsafe repairs certified, and insurance settlements redirected through North Key. He had copied the records and contacted an investigator. Brooks looked at Jonah. "You?" Jonah said nothing. The letter continued. "I asked Jonah Vale to wait. If I was wrong, I would not drag you and Sophie through suspicion. If I was right, acting too soon would tell them where the copies were." Mara lowered the page. "You let us lose the house." "I followed his condition. He was dead, and the notice had not come." "You watched us struggle." "Yes." The heater died. Cold spread. Sophie asked, "What condition?" Ben said I could intervene only if the number began with 74 and the envelope was blue. Luis answered quietly, "Emergency orders use white envelopes. Blue comes from internal compliance." Ruth turned. Then housing knew the file was protected. The final page shook between Mara's hands. Ben wrote that Grant Mercer had threatened to make his family pay the balance if he refused to withdraw his statement. He believed silence would buy them time. Then his handwriting changed. "Tell Sophie I did not choose to leave her. Tell Mara I kept the promise the only way I knew how." Sophie tapped her knee 3 times. Mara pressed the paper to the desk until it stopped trembling. Jonah removed an identification wallet. A federal transport seal framed his younger photograph. Senior Special Investigator. Brooks read it twice. "You were federal?" "I retired 11 months ago." "Ben was your informant?" "Protected source, until someone inside the county exposed him." Luis stepped back. Elaine had access to the protection code. A phone vibrated inside Ruth's coat. Unknown caller. She answered on speaker. Elaine Cross's voice filled the cold office. "Do not take those papers to the police. If you want Mara's house back, bring me the letter before sunrise." At 9:12 a.m., the county hearing room smelled of wet coats and overheated wiring. Victor Shaw rose before Jonah removed his canvas bag from his shoulder. "Madam Hearing Officer, this man has no standing. He was detained yesterday for disrupting a lawful possession." Jonah set the bag beneath Mara's chair. Helen Ward, 61, adjusted narrow glasses. "Appearance is not evidence, Mr. Shaw." "Then facts. Mr. Vale has no current federal appointment. He entered a grieving family's dispute and removed secured property." "I picked up photographs," Jonah said. "Speak when addressed." Jonah folded his hands. Across the aisle, Elaine Cross stared at the brass key sealed in a clear pouch. Luis sat behind her, one knee bouncing. Ruth kept Sophie close, holding a paper cup away from the girl's fingers. Ward turned to Mara. "Had you met Mr. Vale before this week?" "No." Grant Mercer exhaled softly. Shaw lifted the blue notice. "Yet you trusted him with documents affecting your home?" "I trusted him less than I trusted the people taking it." A pen stopped. "Mrs. Ellis is exhausted. Mr. Vale used her dead husband's private phrases to gain influence." Sophie whispered, "He didn't attribute them." Ruth touched her sleeve. Ward heard. "What did he do, young lady?" "He said them right." Grant looked toward Sophie. Mara shifted her chair between them. Shaw's voice tightened. "Children should not be drawn into this." Jonah spoke without raising his voice. "Then stop using her mother's grief as your argument. Mr. Vale, identify yourself for the record." Jonah stood. He straightened the bent collar of his coat with 2 fingers. "Jonah Elias Vale. Until November last year, I served as Senior Special Investigator with the Federal Transportation Integrity Office. I led Protected Inquiry TRS-74. Only Luis's knee kept moving. Shaw smiled thinly. Retired credentials do not make you custodian of this case. No, Ben Ellis did. Jonah placed a notarized directive down. He was a protected source. 6 days before his death, he assigned me custody of a redundant evidence archive. I could release it only if his family received a blue compliance notice tied to prefix 74. Elaine's chair scraped backward. Ward looked at her. Director Cross? I need counsel. You have counsel, Grant murmured. Sit down. She did, missing the chair edge once. A clerk entered with a gray archival box. Delivered under emergency preservation order. Can you open it? The key can. Sergeant Madden cut the pouch and handed Jonah the brass key. Metal clicked against metal. Sophie's breathing grew shallow. Jonah inserted the key, then stopped. Before I open this, note the seal number. The clerk read it aloud. Luis covered his mouth. Mara turned. You know it. It matches the outside access token. Grant's thumb worked the same cuff crease. The lock released with a small snap. Inside lay 3 bound inspection logs, a drive in a tamper bag, and an audio recorder labeled in Ben's handwriting. Jonah stepped aside without touching them. Ward looked at Shaw. You asked for facts. Then the recorder's red light came on by itself. The recorder clicked, and every chair in the hearing room stopped moving. For 3 seconds, there was only a spoon scraping ceramic. Once, twice, 3 times. Sophie touched her finger to her knee in the same rhythm. Then Ben's voice came through the speaker. 2 sugars today. I need to stay awake. Mara gripped the table. A second voice answered. Grant Mercer. You look tired, Ben. I was checking the East Span reports. Those reports were approved. They were replaced. Grant said, Careful with that word. Ben continued. The concrete samples don't match the invoices. Neither do the crew logs. Someone certified work that wasn't done. You're an engineer, not an investigator. I know. Then act like one. Ben said, I sent the originals outside the county. Grant's cuff stopped moving. Where? That depends on what happens next. Jonah closed his eyes. Grant's recorded voice softened. You have a wife. A little girl. Ben did not answer. The spoon touched the cup once, then silence. Withdraw your statement, Grant said, and this remains a disagreement about paperwork. And if I don't? North Key buys distressed accounts every day. Mortgages move. Claims stall. People lose houses for reasons no one questions. Sophie's tapping stopped. She tucked both palms beneath her legs. Is that a threat? Ben asked. It's a forecast. Victor Shaw stood. This audio has not been authenticated. Ward did not look at him. Sit down. Ben's voice returned, quieter. I promised Sophie I'd be home for her reading. Grant laughed once. Then go home. I will, after you sign that you received these discrepancies. You still think signatures protect people? No, copies do. A door opened on the tape. Footsteps crossed tile. Then Elaine Cross's voice, distant but clear. Grant, the compliance file is ready. Elaine pressed both hands flat on the table. The recording stopped. Mara could still hear the spoon. Inspector Dana Reeves, 49, entered through the side door, carrying a sealed sleeve. She checked each label before sitting. I compared the device metadata with the Federal Archive, she said. The recording is continuous. No edits. It was made April 8th, 2025. 6 days before Ben died, Ruth whispered. Donna nodded. The background access chime matches Mercer Construction's former executive office. Shaw rose. "We request recess." Ward turned to Elaine. "Who prepared the compliance file?" Elaine's lower lip moved once. "I don't remember." Luis rose behind her. "I do." He placed the copied entry log on the clerk's desk. "It was created from your terminal at 10:43 that night." Mara lifted Ben's photograph from the evidence box. He stood half-turned from the camera. Sophie leaned into her shoulder. "Mom," she whispered. "He was trying to come home." Mara kissed the top of her head. "Yes," she said. "He was." Donna removed one final item from the sleeve, a transit card bearing Ben's name and a timestamp from the morning of his death. This was never entered into the accident report. Jonah looked at the card, then at Grant. Because it proves Ben went somewhere else first. Now. At 9:41 a.m., Dana Reeves placed Ben's transit card beneath the document camera. The timestamp filled the wall. April 14th, 2025. 6:12 a.m. "Where did he go?" Helen Ward asked. Donna opened a route map. "County records say Mr. Ellis drove directly to East Span. This card shows he boarded the river shuttle to North Keys Records Annex." Grant Mercer leaned toward Victor Shaw. "Object?" "This is not a trial," Ward said. "Explain." "I have nothing to explain." Luis slid forward a page. "The annex access log was deleted at 7:03. "By whom?" Mara asked. Luis looked at Elaine. Her badge hung from a blue cord. She lifted it, then let it fall. Donna continued. "A backup kept credential numbers. Director Cross entered at 6:31. Owen Price entered 4 minutes later. Ben Ellis entered at 6:38. Ruth's hand closed around Sophie's shoulder. "And left?" Ward asked. "No exit was recorded." Mara kept her voice level. "Was his accident report false?" "The location was accurate," Dana said. "The timeline was not. He reached the bridge after leaving the annex." Grant stood. "This is speculation from frightened employees and a retired investigator." Jonah remained seated. "Then the originals should calm everyone." Dana opened the first inspection log. 3 pages bore altered material codes. Beneath each was Ben's notation and a receipt showing delivery to Grant's office. Shaw stopped taking notes. Ward turned to Elaine. "Did you authorize survivor mortgages to be reassigned to North Key?" "I signed transfer batches." "Knowing they included protected families?" "I was told the flags were administrative." Luis spoke softly. "You removed the flags." Elaine reached behind her neck for the badge clasp. Her fingers could not open it. Grant said, "Elaine, say nothing else." She looked at him. "My mother's treatment was through the county plan. He knew that." "Who knew?" Ward asked. Elaine pointed without raising her hand. "Mr. Mercer." She described late calls, sealed lists, and orders to issue blue notices after employees died or resigned. She had seen mismatched account numbers. She had signed anyway. "Why Mara?" Donna asked. "Ben kept copies. Grant thought they were in the house." Elaine finally freed the badge. The plastic edge would not enter the narrow evidence envelope. Once, twice. On the 3rd try, Luis held the envelope open. "I am sorry," Elaine said. Mara did not answer. Ward signed an emergency order voiding the eviction and freezing every North Key transfer tied to the county. Dana announced a formal investigation into fraud, evidence suppression, and witness retaliation. Grant was ordered to surrender company records and barred from contacting county staff. He turned toward Mara. "You think this gives you your life back?" Mara folded Ben's letter along its crease. "No," she said. "It gives the next family a chance to keep theirs." Paul Drake entered, carrying the silver lock removed from Mara's door. He placed it on the clerk's table. Ward looked at Grant. "The county is finished using your keys." Outside, Elaine sat alone while officials passed. Mara watched Sophie take Ben's blue mug from Ruth's bag and hold it in both hands. Then Dana approached with 6 more blue files under her arm. At 10:26 a.m., Donna Reeves laid 6 blue files across the council table. "They are not exceptions," she said. "They are a method." Sophie sat beside Ruth, turning Ben's blue mug so the crack faced inward. Michael Thorne, 55, chairman of the county council, adjusted his striped tie. "We can approve immediate compensation if Mrs. Ellis signs a standard confidentiality agreement." Victor Shaw slid the document toward Mara. Mara read 2 pages. "What happens to the other files?" Dana answered. "The freeze remains until review." "And after?" "Each case is handled separately," Thorne said. Mara tapped 1 paragraph. "This stops me discussing how the notices were issued." "It protects all parties," Shaw replied. "Which parties?" "The county. Contractors. You." Sophie's mug touched the table with a small ceramic knock. Mara picked up the pen. She drew 1 straight line through the confidentiality clause. The scratch of ink reached the last row. "No," she said, returning it. Thorne touched his tie. "Refusing may delay payment." "Then delay it." "You have a child to house." "I had a child to house yesterday." No one moved. Mara placed Ben's letter beside the crossed-out clause. He protected copies because a private promise could not stop a public system. "I will not take a private solution." Dana opened a draft order. "We recommend independent review of every eviction involving a deceased municipal employee, off-site preservation of whistleblower records, and a ban on contractors purchasing those families' debts." "That requires funding," Thorne said. Ruth answered. "So did the locks." Jonah stood behind Mara's chair. "Add legal notice before any protected mortgage transfer. Before, not after." Luis raised his hand. "And dual authorization for removing access flags." Elaine sat in the last row without her badge. "Require an external log," she said. "One the county cannot edit." Thorne read the draft again. "What do we call this program?" Jonah looked at Mara. "The Benjamin Ellis Protection Act." Mara shook her head. "Ben wouldn't want his name on a door," she said. "He would want the door to open." She drew the small lighthouse from his letters in the margin. "The Beacon Promise. For anyone who tells the truth and wonders whether their family will pay for it." At 11:18, the vote began. Green lights appeared one by one. The order froze, disputed transfers, created outside review, preserved access logs, and guaranteed counsel before a protected family could be removed. Donna took custody of the 6 files. Luis was assigned to rebuild the system under federal oversight. Elaine agreed to testify in every affected case. Outside, reporters called Mara's name. She walked past them to Paul Drake, who held the old brass lock in a paper bag. "Can you put it back?" He examined the scratches. "Today." Sophie slipped her hand into Mara's. "Does this mean we won?" Mara watched 6 families leave with copies of the order pressed to their coats. "It means they have to ask before they take." By sunset, a county crew waited on her porch. Inside, beneath a film of dust, Ben's unfinished shelf was still exactly where he had left it. 6 months later, the porch light came on at 5:47 p.m. Sophie stood on a kitchen chair, both hands around the new switch plate. Dusk pressed blue against the windows. Above the door, the old fixture glowed through rain, its glass shaped like a lighthouse. "Again?" Mara asked. Sophie clicked it off, then on. "I'm testing the promise." Jonah knelt beside Ben's unfinished shelf and tightened the final screw. Sawdust clung to his sleeves. He had sanded the board smooth, but left one pale rectangle untouched where Ben's palm had rested in an old photograph. "It holds," Jonah said. "The shelf or the promise? Both need checking." Mara placed Ben's blue mug on the shelf. A silver line sealed its crack. A county envelope lay beside it, white this time. The revised report no longer called Ben's death a simple workplace accident. It connected his protected disclosures, the altered timeline, and the pressure placed on his family to the investigation. The final line cleared his professional record. Mara read it twice, then folded the page. "It doesn't bring him home," Jonah said. "No, but Sophie won't have to defend his name." Across town, Grant Mercer waited for trial on fraud, evidence suppression, and retaliation charges. His company had been placed under independent management. He left his office through a side door, carrying one cardboard box. Elaine Cross resigned. Under her cooperation agreement, she worked 3 mornings each week at the county housing center, helping families read notices she once signed without meeting them. The first time Mara saw her there, Elaine was explaining an appeal deadline to an elderly man whose hands shook too hard to hold a pen. "I don't expect forgiveness," Elaine said. Mara shifted the grocery bag on her arm. "Then do the work without it." Elaine nodded and turned the form so the man could read it. Louis Park now supervised the external access log. His shirt buttons matched. Ruth served on the citizen review panel. Paul Drake trained officers to separate family property before removals. Nathan Brooks had written Jonah's words on the station briefing board. Duty and authority are not the same thing. The Beacon Promise rules had already stopped for evictions. Protected files were copied off-site. Survivor mortgages required dual review, and contractors could no longer purchase debts tied to county employees. Dinah Reeves published every flagged case and correction. On the first Saturday of spring, 6 families gathered in Mara's yard. Iris brought folding chairs. Ruth carried coffee. Louise arrived with a box of photographs recovered from storage. Sophie found the fair picture of Ben and slid it into a frame. "He's still half out of it," she said. "He always was," Mara replied. Jonah hung it beneath the shelf, then handed Sophie the brass key. "What does it open now?" "Nothing we need locked." She looped it over the lighthouse switch. That evening, Mara stood alone on the porch while voices moved through the house behind her. The boards were dry beneath her feet. No official waited at the gate. No sedan idled at the corner. Sophie opened the door. "Should I leave the light on?" Mara looked at the gold beam crossing the steps where Ben's photograph had once lain face down. "Yes," she said. "Someone may need to find us." The lighthouse stayed lit. Have you ever seen a family dismissed by a system that was supposed to protect them, or watched one quiet person challenge what everyone else had accepted? Share your experience in the comments. Your story may help someone realize they are not alone. Share this story with someone who believes dignity should never depend on money, status, or who speaks the loudest. Subscribe for more stories about justice, quiet resilience, and the lasting changes that begin when ordinary people refuse to look away. And remember the porch light. Fairness does not always arrive as a grand victory. Sometimes it begins when one person keeps the door open for the next.